I let the lights go out in the gallery, what we did when the power came back. I didn't go to the museum to look at paintings. I went because I was tired of staring at the white walls in my kitchen and telling myself they were neutral. The gala had started at 7 with champagne and short speeches, and the kind of promises cities make when they remember how to be proud. By 11 the donors had loosened their ties, the quartet had surrendered politely to recorded music, and the main gallery had the hush of a room that knows your next sentence will be expensive. I was supposed to be home. Lena had texted at 10:29. We're still breaking down, might crash on the office couch. Don't wait up. And I had said okay with the kind of loyalty that feels almost like anesthesia. At 11:15, I put on a jacket and walked the 6 blocks to the museum because my loyalty was starting to itch. The power went out at 11:42. It didn't die in a panic. It sighed and stepped through a door. The fountains paused mid-breath, the track lights dimmed as if embarrassed to be caught trying so hard, and a collective murmur rose and then learned its inside voice. Emergency strips lit the floor in soft runway lines. The Rembrandt looked less like it was considering me and more like it knew when to mind its own business. In the half-dark, I saw Rowan moving with the kind of calm that frightens reasonable men. He's the operations lead on Lena's team, the man people trust to hang 100 pounds of light at the right height without making physics feel cheated. Hoodie under blazer, sleeves pushed up, radio clipped to his belt like a good secret. He was checking the generator panel and frowning in a way that solicited solutions rather than guilt. He saw me, and because we are both good at not being theatrical, he only inclined his head. "Gabriel," he said, voice pitched for rooms that hate panic, "you picked a fun night." "I needed to see the paintings pretend to sleep," I said. "They do it better than I do." "We'll have the lights back in 5, he said. 10 if the generator remembers it's in the mood. He touched his radio. "Lena, in the mezzanine storage, donor coats, she's good. You can say hello if you want to feel married at a respectable voltage." He said it like a man who had learned to move through other people's weather without catching a cold. I nodded and moved toward the mezzanine stairs. In the faint emergency, wash the frames were shapes with histories. The marble floors felt less like a floor and more like a choice we had made together. I found Lena in the storage wing under the skylight, standing among racks of expensive coats that had cloaked 100 promises. She was tying back her hair and breathing with her mouth open the way she does when her body wants her to stop being useful, and she refuses. Her dress was the black one that makes strangers wonder what tone of voice her husband uses. I had forgotten what my own sounded like. "We lost the main," she said, matter of fact, before she saw me. When she did, her face did a small, startled thing, the kind of truth that flickers before it remembers its manners. "You came." "The kitchen asked me to audition," I said. "I didn't get the part." She smiled, but not at the joke. "Rowan has the generator." "Rowan has a lot of things," I said, more sharply than the dark deserved. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and decided to be honest. "He has competence," she said. "It's easy to confuse that with other nouns when the power's out." "Do you want me to leave?" I asked, "or to help you hang the coats?" "I want you to stop guessing," she said and stepped nearer. In the blue-red light her mouth resisted apology. "If you're going to help, help. If you're going to interrogate me, wait until the lights come back so you can see what it does to my face." We hung coats like truce flags. We tucked silk sleeves back into themselves. Somewhere in the main hall, the quartet tried one last improvisation, and then decided citizens were more resilient without it. The building made the small, satisfied noises old buildings make when they are allowed to be useful without speeches. Julian was here, I said, nomming the man who had added himself to my uninvited sentences for the last month. He was, she said. He thanked me for not letting the gala forget why we borrowed the room from the city. He drank one glass of water and took a cab because he had to be useful somewhere else at 8. No one kissed anyone in an elevator. You were waiting for me to ask. I was waiting for the question not to make me less interesting, she said. You're allowed to be curious and not become a detective. A small, honest heat moved along my neck at that, the kind that has nothing to do with guilt and everything to do with forgetting that I could still make a room lean toward me instead of away. She stepped back and leaned against the rack. The emergency strips painted the floor with runway light. 100 coats looked like a curtain call. You wanted me to come, I said. I wanted you to be the man who would walk 6 blocks at midnight because he didn't like where the sentence was going, she said. I wanted you to have your hands in the same air I'm using to breathe. She reached, took my wrist, and pulled me a step closer. It wasn't the touch of a woman trying to be forgiven. It was the touch of a woman reminding a man of the version of himself she had once put her name against. When the generator caught, it did it with a brute competence that pretended not to be proud. Lights rose. The Rembrandt remembered it had obligations. Somewhere the bartender cheered in a voice appropriate for shrines. Lena let go of my wrist and smoothed my sleeve like we were in a movie that had decided to be reserved. You can go home, she said, but the sentence tried to be generous and instead looked like surrender. Or you can meet me in the south wing when we're done. I want to show you something. The generator held. The gala exhaled. People found reasons to claim the night had gone well. At 1:10, the donors had mostly retreated to cars with interiors that remembered their names. I helped a volunteer coil cords and tried not to perform competence at her. Lena disappeared into a room that exists to hide the evidence of good deeds and emerged without earrings. Her eyes had the cut glass clarity she gets when she's decided we are done pretending to be ideal. Come, she said, before I talk myself into being responsible. The South Wing's special exhibition was closed, which made it perfect. The guard at the end of the corridor recognized Lena's voice as an all-access pass and looked away like good security does. Inside, the hall smelled like paint drying in the next century. The show was called Heat and was mostly hung. Labels leaned against pedestals waiting to be named officially. In the middle, a long steel bench waited the way certain kinds of furniture do when they've learned to keep secrets. I want us to admit it in front of other people's work, she said. Whatever needs admitting. I wanted to hit him, I said. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to be him for 50 minutes. And then I wanted to be the man who could stand in this room and make you forget his name. At least 2 of those are honest, she said, coming close enough that I could smell the last hour on her skin. Do you want to know what I wanted in the elevator? No, I said, and I meant it like a sentence that had done its time. Tell me what you want here. I want to feel you remember me without managing me, she said. I want to be interesting to you even when I'm not gentle. I want your hands where the day cannot choreograph them. The emergency lights had found their dignity. The generator breathed steadily like a man allowing himself to be believed. I put my palms on her hips and moved my thumbs under the black fabric at the exact place the day never gets to own. She took a breath like a verdict. I kissed her slowly until the room stopped auditioning for anyone else's story. Her hand went inside my jacket and slid down the front of my shirt with the courtesy you use to undo a stubborn sentence. I put my mouth on the place below her ear where truth hides and felt her lean into it like a fact that refused to be footnoted. We didn't undress because we didn't need the day to prosecute us. We made a small, defiant altar of the bench and the shadow of a sculpture that didn't mind being implicated. When she whispered my name, it wasn't apology or performance. It was a note that told me which way the room leaned. I won't describe how long it took or which part of the night made a single, proud sound. I'll say only that when we stopped, the museum looked like a city that had decided to believe us. She lay back with her hands over her face, laughing in a way that made me want to erect signs in hallways that said this way to accuracy. I kissed her wrist and felt her pulse do the same arithmetic mine was struggling with. She lowered her hands and looked at me like I just remembered something essential about speaking in complete sentences. "Do you still hate him?" she asked. "I hate that he reminded me to come find you," I said. "I am grateful that he reminded me to come find you." "We can both be true while we're not a courtroom," she said. "You don't need a gavel to feel everything at once." We put ourselves back in the shapes the morning expects, and she led me through the service corridor where the paintings wait to be brave. The guard nodded us past like he was in on fewer jokes than were available. On the steps outside, the city held its breath. Wind cleaned the streets. A car flashed by with the kind of optimism that pretends not to need directions. At breakfast at 8, the team traded stories that borrowed adjectives from heroism. Rowan leaned against a column with the haunted calm of a man who had coaxed a generator back from sulking. He saw me and offered a careful nod. When no one was looking, he moved his hand a fraction, a small salute to whatever we were choosing not to be at 8:13 a.m. I found myself wanting to thank him and also not to owe him anything. I let the desire sit where desires sit when they aren't sure whether they are noble. Later at home, Lena taped 2 ticket stubs from the gala to the side of the fridge under the magnet shaped like a boat we bought one summer we didn't ruin. "Evidence," she said with a smile that refused to succor God, "of what we did when the power went out." "Remind me what we did," I said. "We refused to be polite," she said. "We told the truth in a room meant for other people's beauty. We didn't pretend someone else's competence makes ours smaller." I thought you were going to say, "We broke a museum bench." "We broke a habit," she said. "I think the bench was rooting for us." We didn't mention Julian for a while after that. He kept being competent in the public ways that make other people's names arrive in the right order. When I saw him one evening in the loading bay helping a volunteer lift more than she thought she could, I felt the human thing you're supposed to feel, the steadying knowledge that we were all allowed to be exact at the same time. He caught my eye and did the small, disciplined nod again. I returned it because hatred is a posture that empties your hands. Some nights, when all the sensible things have been done and the weather pretends to be finished, we go back to the museum. Not inside. We sit on the stone steps and look at our reflections in the glass like we are verifying our own signatures. Lena lets her knee lean into mine and presses her thumb into that place under my wrist because bodies know where truth lives before language applies for licensing. We talk about the things we almost did and the things we still might do if the power went out again at the right time. If you're here for scandal, I can make a better story out of the elevator and the black dress, and the way the water of the city wants to see itself. But the truth that survived the gallery is smaller and therefore more useful. A man stopped being polite long enough to walk 6 blocks. A woman told Desire the difference between a vote and a temperature. Another man stood at the edge of the room and chose not to become the reason someone regretted the lights. We made room for heat without setting the museum on fire. We ate before anybody tried to win. We slept when the clock grew unkind. We touched in daylight with the confidence of people who had watched the generators take over and decided the exhibit could remain open, exactly as it was, with the truth humming quietly behind the walls.